Hello everyone, my name's Tanya.
And my name's Michael Morgan.
And we are both animation professionals who work in various sides of the animation industry, and we are here to talk to you about animated futures, which is a bit more about jobs in animation. Did you?
So why are we here to give the talk? So I'm just going to go over this slide and say, animation is a big and ever-growing industry with a diverse range of jobs which may suit your interests. So that's a case of, like it says, different kinds of areas in animation, and that's what we're going to be going over with you guys in this talk, okay? Because the UK industry is growing, there are more opportunities for young people like you to get involved, and it's our passion. Both of us enjoy animation.
So just a bit more about me and my background. My name is Tanya Scot, and I am a freelance animation designer and illustrator, but also now writer based in South East London. I'm from a mixed background, so my mum's from Singapore, my dad's English, and you can see here, this one's me getting very excited about a very cool deep play set, which I still am very fond of because I'm grown up. And I use she, her pronouns, if that's of interest to you, and I always say that I'm always sleepy and I'm quite frequently hungry. So I am a 2D animation art director and designer, which we'll go over with you a bit more later on. And my job basically involves creating backgrounds, props and characters, and you'll often see it in TV series, maybe commercials, games. And I've worked in the industry for over 10 years now, so since graduating university.
And so me, like I said, my name is Michael Morgan, and I'm an animator working in film and TV and video games. So I was born and raised in the land of Brum. I'm not sure if you actually know what the land of Brum is, but that's Birmingham, Middle Earth, Central. Okay, Tolkien's from Birmingham, if you wanted to know. And my passion for drawing, watching Saturday morning cartoons, movies, reading comics and playing video games is what led me to animation. So growing up, I did a lot of drawing and yeah, watching a lot of cartoons, watching films. So I was raised in the 80s. So a lot of those 80s films, yes, that's a different century from now. Obviously that was in the 20th century. So, but I was watching films like Back to the Future, Gremlins, E.T., stuff like that. So that really got me into films and animation. And yeah, now that I'm an adult, I can't believe that I'm actually doing that kind of stuff as my day-to-day job. Okay.
So I'm going to go a bit over the industry itself. So animation industry supports over 15,000 jobs, and the industry is worth almost £1 billion, which I think is equivalent to the fishing industry, which is very current. And our industry in the UK is responsible for some of the most successful films and TV series in the UK, including Isle of Dogs, Horrid Henry, Jojo and Gran Gran, Mr. Bean and Early Man. Half of the animation employers have said that they have found it hard to fill some jobs, so that's why another reason why we've come to talk to you today. And many of these jobs need people who enjoy drawing and like using computers.
So what is animation? Well, go back on that one, I think, the book, yeah. You might have questions about animation later on, but animation is an art of playing still images on a rapid sequence to create the illusion of movement. So this video here, it's about, like, if you get your maths book, English book, whatever, sometimes you might draw on the corner of it and you can get to make still images frame by frame, each page a different image that incrementally changes, so you can then start to see your character or whatever it is that you're drawing slowly come to life. Okay, so all those old 2D cartoons that you might have watched, the Disney stuff, that's how they actually start out, by one drawing at a time. So here you can see drawing on one paper, drawing on another, and So say, what is it, 12 frames makes a second, or even 24 frames makes a second, depending on how you go about it. Okay. And here you can see he's got his peg, puts it together, and there you go. He's waving. So what is animation? Can you think of something you've watched recently that involves animation? So as you can see, we're asking the questions to you. So it's kind of like for you guys to think about it and see what you watched, especially now you're watching a lot of Netflix and streaming kind of TV. You'll find that a lot of TV programs, there's a lot of animation in there, a lot of films, adverts, games. So you'll see that animation is involved in quite a lot of areas. You might not have thought about it at first, but when you look around you, animation is basically everywhere.
So we're just going to talk through the different kinds of animation that you can make. So there's hand-drawn, which is referred to as 2D animation, computer generated animation, which is sometimes referred to as CGI or 3D animation. And then there's also stop motion, which is usually made with puppets and in 3D space. So 2D animation is what I specialize in, and it's usually drawn by hand. Well, it's always drawn by hand. And it looks flat, so that's how you can tell it's 2D. It generally looks like these images down here. And it can be done with traditional mediums such as pencil, ink, paper, but it can also be done on the computer. So I have a drawing tablet and I draw directly onto the computer. And this is how varied it can look, which is quite exciting. So each frame, as you've seen, can be drawn individually. So this is an example of traditional pencil on paper animation, and it's from the very well-known film, The Jungle Book. And you'll be able to see here how it's all been done with pencil. So in order to do this, this is going to be 25 drawings for a second of footage. And every single one of those frames has been drawn by Milk Cole, which is pretty incredible, because I don't think I could draw a tiger on rotation while he's talking to me, but that's how skilled some animators are. So how long do you think that hand-drawn animation takes to make, now that I've told you that it needs 25 pictures to make 1 second footage? So as you can imagine, it takes a very, very long time. And from start to finish, it took 5 years to complete Disney's Hercules. So that's just one example, but I've seen some examples of 2D films taking up to 8 years. But 2D animation also can include this kind of animation, which is using puppets. And that's generally how we make TV series here in the UK. And it's very, very similar to how you might make a cutout puppet at school. So you can see here, this is just a little cutout monkey, and he's got little joints here. And that's exactly the same principle for Peppa Pig, so it's no different really.
So jumping from 2D, which is traditional 2-dimensional, we're going to jump into 3D, which is the 3rd dimension. And as Tanya said, it's known as CGI, which stands for computer generated imagery. So like most examples that people think of when they think of 3D is Toy Story. And Toy Story is probably because it's one of the early ones, one of the first ones back in the day when Pixar introduced 3D animation to the world. So before that, it was a lot of 2D from Disney, DreamWorks and places like that, that people would watch on the big screen. But then we got into the 3D world. So here you can see Moomin. And Moomin, actually Moomin Valley, started out as a 2D show. So back in the days, there was Moomin, which was a full-on TV show that would, you know, after school you'd run over and watch it. So that was a good thing. And then as time went on, things have changed and developed and moved into the 3D world. So now you have 2D and 3D. So not only that, you also have mixed media. So you also have, in that sense, 3D with live action, okay? And how does that work? And how long does that take? Well, let me jump over to the next slide and I'll see. So what we have here is some imagery from Paddington. And I don't know if you guys have seen Paddington 1, 2. this is where you can see that the live action, which is on the top left, and that's the character, the actor, with probably the director or one of the people that are helping make it look like Paddington's licking his hair. So he's got a paintbrush or anything and he's painting him. And then on the right, you'll see the actual animation team will then put the CG character into the shot, replacing the human there, and then making it look like Paddington's actually in the footage, licking the boy on the head. And in the middle of the screen, you can see the CG at the bottom, and at the top is actually the live action puppet that they have as a representation. So they need to, how can I say, the live action one, the real physical puppet there, so you can feel the fur. And then they, at the bottom, the computer generated one is trying to replicate the fur for the character. Okay, cool. So stop motion, we can jump it back and forth in this one. As both of us have worked at Aardman and been able to do 2D and 3D there, but also see how Aardman do a lot of their stop frame animation. They have the clay, which you can make materials like clay or plasticine. And if you think of the old Aardman, when they first started out, they had Morph. So if you want to check it out, they've got a character called Morph that was made out of plasticine. And these models are moved in physical space, and you have to take pictures of them with every incremental move. So think of what Tanya was saying about 25 frames a second. You've got to move your character and work within these kind of constraints. So each tiny movement is photographed. The photographs are edited together in a rapid sequence, which gives the illusion of movement. And yeah, how long does it take? Well, Wallace and Gromit took 15 months to make. And then you have examples of, like I said, Morph and Element. Okay. You can jump in on this one.
So here's just some examples of stop motion and how varied it can be and how varied it can look. So Wallace and Gromit, as Michael just said, that these are originally plasticine models. The clangers here, which were from back in the day, like before even my time, but now have been brought forward. I think they're made out of fabric with a sort of wired skeleton inside. And then Kubo and the two strings. So this is an American studio called Leica who make this, but these are very complex puppets that involve 3D printing and a lot of technology that, you know, I'm not familiar with, but it's very exciting and interesting if you have a look at that. We've got a little clip here from another Leica film called Box Trolls, which is a really good example, so you can see how much involvement and time it takes from the animator to create the illusion of movement. So you can think of this next time you watch a stop motion film.
Just keeping the streets clean. Free from evil. Yeah. Ever think about the universe, Mr. Trout? What if our world is just like a tiny speck? A tiny little speck. And there are giants looking down on us. And every time we move, it's actually them moving us. Seems a bit tedious. Like that. Just there. Me blinking. That would have taken them a day. Me moving my arm. 500 men. I mean, none of them are going home. They're having to do this bit. And now this bit. And this bit. I mean, this should stop. I think it throws up notions of free will. It's too much. And then they would have had to have done me talking about the blink. And it never ends. I think they make a meal of it, to be honest.
There. So the first question that's come through is, what software do you use to animate? I suppose, is there a difference between the 2D software and the 3D software?
Yeah, do you want to go first, Michael, and then I'll answer?
So with 3D is different software. We use Maya, so it's called Autodesk Maya, and that's what we do all the creation for the animation. So it's a 3D software. You physically create your animation inside that, the model, the character, rigging, which is putting the skeleton in. So yeah, that's all in software called Maya.
For 2D, there's so many different softwares now. It just seems to be ever growing. So if you're really interested in doing like just design and not necessarily animating, it's things like Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator. Then there's, for actual animation, there's Adobe Flash, and there's also 2 other softwares we use a lot in series work called Toon Boom Harmony, and then another smaller program which is a British-based company called Cell Action 2D. And Cell Action 2D is generally more for like the paper cutout, like things like Peppa Pig and Charlie and Lola.
And actually, I just realized when I say Maya, that's for industry, but there is also, like, if you guys want to get like free software that you can start playing with, it's called Blender. So Blender is something that a lot of people are starting to play with now. So yeah, you don't have to get this big expensive software. You can try out Blender. And
I think Blender has 2D capabilities now as well. I'm just going to do the hard sell for 2D, but you can do 2D in Blender, and also Procreate's very good because it's actually very cheap. You can do it on your iPad, and that now has animation capabilities in it as well. And it's very good for just testing things out.
Lovely. And yeah, we've just put the URL for Blender in the chat, but I'm sure if any of the pupils have questions about any of the sites or software that's asked afterwards, we'll be able to put a list together for them, which would be great. There's just another question here really quickly. Is the ability to draw still important, or is it more computer generated now? So is there a balance between those 2 things, or does one sort of supersede the other nowadays? Or
so in terms of 3D, because I started off drawing, but I haven't actually drawn. I've been animating for 20 years and I haven't drawn properly or like really had to draw anything amazing in the last 10, 15 years. I still scribble to get my ideas, but it's not about getting fine drawing. 2D, I'm guessing you have to be a lot more of a draftsman, you know, like having your skills up to speed. But in 3D, there's a lot of guys who are amazing animators that just draw stick figures just to get their ideas, and that's what gives them what they need, and then they jump into 3D software and do everything they need from there.
Yeah, I'd say from a 2D point of view, I don't think it is amazing how many people I know who might not be actually that good at drawing, and it just depends on the kind of job you want to go for. Like, because my job is making a lot of decisions about what the series will look like, what the TV show will look like, I have to be good at drawing because I have to communicate those things with everybody else on the crew. But the crew is so big and there are so many different aspects to animation that if you're an animator and you're animating on Peppa Pig, you don't need to know how to draw. If you're going to be a model maker and make puppets for, you know, other animators to use, or you want to be a stop motion animator, you don't need to draw. So it's not that important. It really just depends on what you're interested in, and if your passion is already drawing, then it would be a good fit. Okay, so we did just briefly said this. So this is why you might be interested in working in animation. So if you have an interest in film or TV or games, like Michael said, when he was younger, he had a really big interest in all those things. I too really loved animation when I was younger, even though I didn't even think about it as a career. And yeah, drawing as well. If you like to draw, then there's obviously jobs for you in animation.
Yeah, it's one of those things of, if you look at this list, what we've put down here is, it does all come down to if you enjoy being creative, storytelling. It's that whole thing of, like me and Tanya was just saying, we didn't really think of, oh, when we get to the age of 14 or whatever, and you get your careers teacher asking you, what do you want to do? It's not like, boom, I want to be an animator. That's not really how things go. It's more of a case of, these are things that you're building up over time. You know, as a young child, all of the things that you enjoy, if they happen to be being creative and wanting to tell stories and being very practical, like it says, pottery, model making, and drawing, and having interest for all these different things that, again, films, TV and games, all of that storytelling. So then you can pop up your computers, you enjoy acting and storytelling, and and team collaboration. All these things come together, and that's what being an animator or working in animation entails. So it's just a lot of these things come together, and then you realize, boom, I enjoy being creative, solving problems, and animation might be something that I would want to get into. All right. And here you have those different areas. So the guy running with the papers, the animator. Animator is someone like me and Tanya was saying, who's getting all those drawings, putting them together, bringing it to life, and you're having that character, okay? And then you've got your background designer who is building the environment in which your character then lives in, okay? The compositor will be someone who gets the images and basically makes them look as good as possible, okay? And then you've got, so the compositor kind of gets your character, your background, puts it together and makes everything look good. Then the editor or the edit assistant is someone who then gets all the footage, all the images, puts them together, plays them and starts chopping it. And they're basically the one who, once it's gone through them, what you see as an audience is what the editor has put together as a presentation. A lighting artist. So if you never had the lighting artist, all that animation, the backgrounds would all look like they're in pitch black in the dark, or they wouldn't have the nice shadows and silhouettes. So lighting artists would be in there giving the light to the scene. Marketing. And what does marketing do? Marketing is the ones that are going to be able to let you know the latest and greatest projects that's out there. So when you look at the bus or the billboards or any, you know, adverts on TV, marketing's behind that to let you know as an audience what's out there and what to get excited about. The modeler. If the modeler wasn't there, then the animator wouldn't have anything to be animating. So that's where the modeler comes in. They create all the assets, the props and the characters. Then we got the runner, the fastest person on the planet. So the runner goes from one studio to the next, and they're kind of making sure that people who are working in the industry are connected. So if you're in a studio and you need something from one place or the other, the runner will be able to be the person that helps out and gets things around from studio to studio, okay? And then the storyboard artists, they're actually one of the first people on board. So the storyboard artists will be at the beginning scribbling out the ideas, okay? So when you talk about drawing, if you want to really, if you were passionate about drawing and drawing is what you want to do, then the storyboard artists, concept artists, and someone who's got the word artist right there with the, you can see the pencil in his hand, that's the ideas person, and they're putting the panels together on paper. All right, hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, you can ask questions and we'll try and elaborate on it a bit further, okay?
So I'm just going to talk a little bit about my pathway into animation, how I got into it. And I hope generally what I'm trying to get at, which you'll see, is that I don't want anyone to feel like they have to make their mind up right now, or that they would understand exactly what they want to do while you're studying at school, because that certainly isn't the case. It wasn't the case for me. So I went to a very academic Catholic girls' school, and we were known locally as the Smurfs because we had a royal blue uniform with white tights on, which was as stylish as you can imagine. And when I was growing up, my grandma, she was based in Singapore, she'd always talk to me on the phone. She'd always ask me if I was going to be a doctor. My mum was a nurse, and I couldn't think of anything worse than that. I'm not going to be around bodily fluids. No one could pay me enough to do that kind of work. And my dad wanted me to have a stable job in an office like he had, because he comes from a very working class background. But I knew I would be so bored. I constantly was thinking of ideas and telling stories. So for me, I just knew that wasn't for me. But what I did know is that I really loved being creative. I loved the creative arts. So when I had my GCSEs, when I had a choice to make, I picked music over all the other arts. And I studied that. And then for AS level, which I'm not sure how your qualifications work now, but from AS level, I picked all the arts. I picked music, art, media, and theatre studies. And I had to make the conscious choice to pick theatre over physics, which was the other thing I was interested in. And I was a bit disappointed because when I did my AS level art, I didn't do very well, which might be surprising to hear considering I draw for a living now. But it really frightened me because I thought that that would be the end of the world and I wouldn't get into university and things like that. But that wasn't the case at all. And I actually decided then to pick art over music for A-level. So that was a combination of theatre, media and art. And at the time, I hadn't even considered animation. What I was really interested in was theatre design and getting involved in costumes and set design for theatre. So it was completely by accident that I got into animation. It was a bit of a light bulb moment. I was looking through the UCAS courses at art and design, and I just saw animation on the list, and I was just like, oh yeah, of course, animation. It's like everything I love combined into one, and I've always loved animation, so why not? But I decided I wanted to take a year out and work before I went to university just to get a bit of experience, because I know that I'm bad at making decisions. And then after that, I decided that I was going to go and study animation at the University of the West of England. And because I'm not good at making decisions, I went to the University of the West of England because I thought I wanted to be a stop motion animator. It was nothing to do with doing 2D. But there was so much I didn't know because I was, you know, my school was very academic. They didn't teach us Photoshop. They didn't teach us how to use any animation software. So it was all new to me and I all had to learn it at university. But actually that meant that I was much more open to listening to my tutors and finding out things for myself. And I was very lucky. So when I graduated in 2010, within a couple of months, I got employed at Aardman Animations in Bristol, and it wasn't in stop motion, it was in 2D, and that was where I learned the software selection 2D. I learned how to build puppets and do backgrounds, and networking was key. So in animation, it's surprising to hear because I think the idea of being an animator is sort of makes you think that we all sit alone in a room somewhere and we don't talk to anybody. I think a lot of animators would like to do that, but the reality is that our job relies on us communicating with each other and working as a team. So networking is very important. You have to sort of build those relationships and maintain them. And then in 2011 or 2012, I moved back to London to work on the TV series Sarah and Duck. And that's basically how I worked my way up to art direction. So these are some of the TV shows I've worked on. You'll probably recognise a few of them. I'm not sure how old you were when some of them came out. You might be too old to watch them now. But if you've got younger siblings, they might be interested to see some of the things you've worked on. It's always nice when you hear kids have been watching what you've put on TV. And I like my job. And I'm here to tell you how much I like my job. So you can tell, you know, I'm being honest. But it's not always easy, and I think like a lot of people think that as an animator or as an animation professional you just drawing cartoons all day, you know, it's so easy. But it's not, you know, it's like most media jobs, it can be quite intense. You know, you have to maintain your relationships, you have to make decisions of where you're going to live and where you're going to work. But actually it means that there's loads of variety in my job, so I'm never doing the same thing every year. I'm doing something different, I'm meeting new people. I love the creativity and the freedom that it gives me to explore my bread and butter, kind of my job. And generally animation people are really nice, so I'm really lucky that I work with really nice people. And I really like that there isn't just one path, so I actually can move into different industries because my skill set is so broad. So even though I am mostly a 2D animation designer, I'm actually working on a graphic novel at the moment, which is going to be published in America in 2023. You know, I can do writing, I can move into other disciplines, puppetry, anything, because it's all related to animation, and that's what's so great about it. I'm just going to quickly show you my show reel because this is just personal work and it just shows you a bit more of what I like to do in my spare time, so you can see that it's not just the sort of stuff you see on the television. Animation has potential to be anything you like.
Maga naga naga. Diga biga diga. Ina mina diga diga de tai dame diga maga naga diga biga rola diga ram pam coach. दिल में तू है कोई लेने वाला ऐसे वैसे को नहीं देने वाला दिल में तू है कोई लेने वाला ऐसे वैसे को नहीं देने वाला सूरतिया हंसी हो उमरिया जवा हो कोई भी उसे देखे तो बस ये घुमा हो यही है यही तो है वो मीना मीना डिका
I like drawing bums, which you'll probably see if you ever visit my website.
That's great stuff, Tanya. Really cool. So yeah, I'm gonna jump in and say my little story. So like I said to you guys before, so at the beginning, at school I enjoyed arts and English, writing stories and drawing scenarios. So what swirled in my head was all I wanted to do during school days. So what I'm saying there is, at school, yes, it was all about drawing, all about writing. So those are two things for me that I was always doing all the time. So drawing wasn't seen by a lot of, my parents were okay, but it's a lot of adults around me. They always thought, you draw too much. You know, you need to start looking at being, when you actually graduate, come out of school, you want to get a job being doctor, lawyer, anything to do with business. That was the main thing, okay? Drawing was a no-no, it's a red flag. People just didn't see where that was going to take me. So the thing was, I always wanted to draw, okay? And that's something that I just thought, how can I make my drawing be something I do as an adult in later life? And so I thought, how can I move it with technology, the latest, which was computers? So back then it was anything that was computer-based, that was the new trend, that was the new thing. So I thought, how could I get my drawing and put it with computers? And that's when I thought, okay then, graphic design. So once I left school, I went into college and did graphic design. And it was at that point, graphic design I started to see was photography. It was all these different things, different areas. And it was, yeah, computers were there, but it was also the drawing, which I was pushing. And then it was from there that I saw I wanted to take it even further. So I went to uni, did multimedia, and it was in multimedia that I actually saw in one of the modules, animation. And that's when I fell in love with animation, okay? So when I went from uni, and let's say it was animation, it actually was what Tanya was doing, it's 2D animation. So I started out as a 2D animator at uni, and that's what I studied. But when I studied 2D animation, that was back in 1999. So when I graduated, the whole industry actually was going through a change. So this is when a lot of studios were now saying, no more 2D, we want to go 3D. So a lot of the things that they were moving away from 2D and starting to make more shows like Toy Story, Shrek, A Bug's Life and things like that. And at the time, back in 99, they were getting the last kind of shows with Disney were Brother Bear, Lilo and Stitch. So that was this kind of time where things were changing. So I had to change my whole skill set and go from 2D and learn 3D animation. So learning 3D in my own time, I then had to build my skills up. And I show you these projects here that I've worked on, but that transition period from going from uni, graduating, to this now, what I do now, I had to do a lot of work in between where I'm learning 3D, looking and finding out about 3D, looking at what studios, what artists, what people that would influence me, and looking at, so like Clone Wars, a lot of the stuff for Clone Wars, if you think of Clone Wars, there was a Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars before the 3D one, and I would look at that and I was amazed with that. So when I did manage to get into the industry and I was called up to work on Clone Wars, I looked at the Genndy stuff and I thought, oh my gosh, it's going to be amazing like that. The project was amazing, very different style, but it was seeing 2D, how that had that impact on 3D, and then seeing how we could take that and move it into a 3D kind of world. So for me, what I'm saying there is I took my 2D skills and built it and developed it into 3D, and then got to work on shows like The Clone Wars, they're a different style, which is Tree Fruit Tom. And if you see those two projects there, they're very much fully CG, fully animated. And then I would move from those fully animated shows into live action. So if you've seen Lone Ranger, the Lone Ranger is very much a live action project, but there are elements in it where it's CG. And that's where you find that you got the horses, you got the scorpions, they're actually all 3D, even though when you watch them, you think to yourself, oh my gosh, I thought they were real. So a lot of these projects here are live action with 3D characters. So you can see Peterson Findon, 3D character, Guardians of the Galaxy, and all that stuff. So yeah, that's when my career started to go from CG to more live action with CG characters. Okay. And this is a combination of the stuff that I do now, right? I guess there's no sound on it. So yeah, these are shots that I was doing in films, from Pacific Rim 2 to Black Panther, Rocket the Raccoon, and Guardians. And what you see there is, this is CG as well, these gorillas for Tarzan. So it's live action characters filmed with CG characters inside there. And this one, Tarzan, is quite funny because this shot, the background characters had no idea what they were looking at because they're not physically there in space. And then we put the CG characters in there to interact with them. And these scorpions are all CG. I went to Germany to work on this Peterson and Findus, this little cat. So that's another thing as well, working in this industry, you can travel around. So you're not just stuck in one place. You can be anywhere in the UK, you can go anywhere internationally. So it's one of those industries where animation takes you all around the world, okay? And a lot of these projects, like Guardians of the Galaxy, you might think, oh, this was made in Hollywood, so it's made in California, but it was actually, I worked on these, whether it's from London to Bristol, different parts of the UK, okay? And then ending on this German one. All right, any questions?
We'll just give everyone at Allerton a chance to get their questions in. But there were two bits of feedback, both of which was that they loved your show reel, Tanya, which I think you saw in the chat. And Michael, they were just saying that they really, really loved those films that you were showing there. So that's fantastic. Again, we'll just give them a chance to get their questions into the chat. Okay, first one in. After high school, what should you do next? College / A-levels, what would you advise? Michael, why don't you take that to start with, and then we'll ask Tanya her opinion as well.
All right. So the thing is, I have no idea what you do in A-levels. So my route, what I did, I jumped from GCSEs. I don't know if they still look GCSEs. And then I went to do college, which was higher learning, which was BTEC. So I went straight from school with arts and English, was the thing that I wanted to get into. So I wanted to basically, it doesn't actually matter as long as you're doing extra learning in those areas that you're focusing on. So if you want to get into animation or at least some kind of way of finding out if that's what you even want to do. So I kind of do the buffet kind of approach where it's a case of do a course or some kind of higher learning that enables me to go broad. So I'm what, 17, 18, 19, I can be as broad as possible and then start to narrow it down, because I don't want to focus on something and think this is going to be what I want to do, and then I find out I can't stand it. So I go for the broad thing. So whether A-levels allows you to do that or college, I know college does, so I kind of push towards college, but it's anything that allows you to do the buffet approach, really, if that makes sense. How about you, Tanya?
Yeah, so I did A-levels, and like I said, I did all the sort of creative subjects. I would say that if you wanted to get into university and do an animation degree, you would be expected to present a portfolio. I don't think it matters whether or not you've done an A-level in art, but you definitely need probably a portfolio to show you have an interest in it and that you've sort of explored it and had a look at it, which you can totally do on your own. You don't have to do it through a qualification. Also, a lot of my peers did a foundation after they did the A-levels, an art foundation. I didn't do one. I shocked one of my tutors when I told him I got into university without one. It wasn't mandatory, so I don't know why he was surprised, but that's quite a good option if you're not sure, because in your foundation degree you get to do a lot of exciting things that you might not be able to do within a school setting. So you'll be able to try photography and ceramics and animation or motion graphics, anything like that. And then lastly, I'd say as well, like, keep an eye out if maybe you didn't want to do something past A-levels. I mean, I'm not sure, I haven't looked into it, but I think we're going to provide you with the links. So some studios now offer apprenticeships, so you can go and apply for those, and then it's basically like work experience. So you can go in and you can see what it's like, because university is not for everybody, and if you want to get your foot in the door, that's a really, really good way to do that.
Yeah, and it's definitely good to try and get into apprenticeship. I remember when I was 15 and I did apprenticeship, and teachers didn't know what to do with me. They was like, "Oh, you want to do comics?" At the time, I was saying I wanted to get into comics, and Birmingham comics, that wasn't something that they knew about. So they sent me to this factory that was making pencils and stationery, and they said, "Oh, actually, you could probably see if you could learn about stationery and do artwork for stationery." So things have changed now, and schools are a lot more aware of what's out there. And obviously with us coming in, it helps as well, industry people coming in and helping with that awareness of what's out there as well. So students can then see what their options are, so they won't end up in a stationery factory trying to draw some pictures of Spider-Man when the studio or the factory doesn't do that kind of thing. So yeah, definitely just go out there. Don't worry about if it's A-levels or college per se, but just think about what is it, like Tanya was saying about portfolio, what is it that can allow you to get to experience the different areas in the creative arts. All right.
The stationery factory sounds like the definition of a pencil pushing job, which is yeah, quite interesting. There's just another question here really quickly. It's asking about the value of starting with like startup companies, smaller companies versus the bigger animation studios and things like that. And obviously both of you guys have worked for very large animation studios. What would your advice sort of be around that? Tanya, what do you think?
Yeah, so a lot of my friends, because I have a big network in Bristol, a lot of my friends are stop motion people, and all of us have different backgrounds. None of us came from the same sort of place. And honestly, I don't think it really matters. What really matters is that you're personable, people like to work with you, that you work hard. Like I was saying before about how, you know, you assume that maybe we're just working in some quiet corner somewhere. You know, my job involves me communicating with the rest of my team, with the animation department, with the director. So it's about how I talk to people, how they talk to me, whether or not I can understand what they want from me and I can get that job done for them. And that's the most important thing. And whether you do that in a big company or a small company, it doesn't really matter, because even though animation is a growing industry, it's still relatively small. So weirdly enough, like if I talk to Michael and he'll probably mention somebody and I'll probably know them somehow, just because we're all sort of moving around and talking to each other all the time. And that's really how we all find our work. It's not really about the companies we're in, it's more about the relationships we build with those people.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things of, when you think, okay, small company, big company, we've worked with these small and big, but I'm just going to echo what Tanya said. It's a case of you as an artist, you as a person that's enabling to connect with different people, different artists, and building that network. Because if you're in a small company, for instance, when I started out in video games, and I started with a smaller studio. But with a smaller studio doing 3D, what I found was I did a lot more title, you know, like different roles. So the screen, what we showed with the animator, then I would have been a modeler. So I would have started off as someone that draws the project, like the ideas, so be a concept artist. Then I would be the person that creates that model, okay? Then I would put the skeleton in that model, and then I would animate it. So I would have roughly about 4 different titles back then in a smaller company. Now, when I moved into a bigger company, I had to choose one of those titles. Which one am I going to do? Because in the bigger companies, they don't want you to be a person who can do everything. They just want you to do one specialized thing. So when you think about that, you might think, I want to be a generalist, someone who can do multiple things, or I want to be, if I go to a bigger company, a specialist and do one thing. There's pros and cons for both, because you might focus on being an animator first in a big company, but then you don't have the luxury of knowing bits about modeling and bits about rigging and bits about concept art. So it all depends on the type of areas you want to go. So with me, I had the luxury of going from small to big, and that path helped me. Small, knowing so much, going to big, narrowing it down, and then doing one. It's kind of like that whole buffet thing again. Because if I go from big to small, then I'm specializing in big on one thing. And then when I go to a smaller place, they want so much from me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they want me to what? Model? I've never modeled in my life. So it all just comes from those different areas and mindsets of how you want to approach it. All right. There's pros and cons all the time.
Yeah, I'd just say as well, like again, like when we were talking about deciding what you're going to do for your A-level, or what you're thinking now about how you're going to spend the rest of your life, I think the important thing is just to be open to the experience and learning as you go. Because, you know, I went the opposite way. I started off at Aardman, which is probably the biggest animation studio in the UK, and I learned from that some things I liked, some things I didn't. And actually, like I prefer working in small studios because I like smaller teams. I like smaller projects where I can sort of have a bit more variation in my work, which I don't get in the big studios. So it's all personal preference, but as long as you're sort of open to learning and finding that out for yourself, then it's fine wherever you start.
Lovely, fantastic. Just conscious of time, have we got a couple more slides left, I think?
Yeah, so this is just basically us going over what we've already said. So you know, if you were serious about looking into animation as a career and doing it at university, you thought university was somewhere you wanted to go and study, then it's worth maybe just looking briefly at the UCAS website without any pressure and just seeing kind of what universities are expecting from you, what they look for. I know it's like, it used to be a points-based system, I'm not sure if it is anymore, but if they're just looking for points in a portfolio, then it doesn't mean that you have to do art as an A level. It might mean that you do something else and then you just do your portfolio in your spare time if you feel like you're up to that.
Yeah, because I built my portfolio literally in my spare time. Like summer holidays, I'll be just drawing. That's it.
Yeah, I think I did A level art, but my portfolio was sort of there's a very creepy stop motion set of directors called the Brothers Key and Yang Schrankmeyer, and I was very much into that as a team. And my art project, my final year art project, was based on that. So I made it sort of, even though it was like classical art, I made it sort of animation related. And then I did a lot of life drawing, which is very important if you want to do hand-drawn animation. Probably most animation or even concept art and VFX. It's something that's worth looking into, is doing life drawing as well.
Yeah, figure drawing, life drawing. I'm not sure what age. I wasn't introduced to that until I think college, or I can't remember if it was college. Drawing naked people was a shock to the system. I didn't know about that until,
They didn't do it at my school, being a Catholic school, but I went to the local college to do it as a supplementary thing, because I knew I wanted to do, by the time I was doing my A2 levels, I knew I wanted to do animation, and a lot of places are saying they wanted to see live drawing in my portfolio. So that's why I started doing it. But as Michael said, it doesn't have to be live drawing. You can just go and draw people on the street walking around, and that will count. It's just understanding gestures and how people walk, and how getting understanding of movement.
Yeah, the anatomy and body mechanics.
So we've talked about level 3 courses, and then apprenticeships we've said briefly. I know Blue Zoo do apprenticeships. I'm not sure which other studios offer it. Maybe possibly Aardman.
Yeah, I'm not sure right now, but yeah.
Yeah,
I think they're really pushing apprenticeships now, so it is something that is on the up, on the rise.
And then animation, again, this is the thing, like, it's so open. So you could do animation at university, but you don't have to do animation. There are a lot of courses who do animation sort of pathways courses, so you'll study it for half a semester. So you might go and study illustration and get into animation that way, or media practice, or games design.
Yeah, because that's how I did it. I didn't go for animation per se. I went into media, and that had a module in animation, and that's when I realized that's the module that I wanted to go into. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think these are pathway sheets that you're probably going to get access to, that you can sort of make decisions about what you want to do and how you're going to get there. And yeah, there's a bit more information for you. I think that's the end of the slides just now.
Okay, cool.
Last chance for questions. All done very well, staying at school until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. On a sunny day as well.
But yeah, it's cool. It's all good. Animation is something, like we were saying earlier, it's one of those things of the industry is really booming in the UK as well as internationally. So it's one of those things of, back in the days when adults were saying drawing's not the way, animation they don't know much about, but when you guys have watched Harry Potter, you play video games, you do all of this stuff, like we said earlier, it all entails with animation. PS5, not even down to your smartphone, your tablets, everything animation. It's there.
Okay, just a last comment from the guys at Allerton, which is just a thank you. It's been really helpful, and the students have been writing notes whilst listening, which is lovely to hear. I suppose it just remains for me to say thank you, Tanya, and thank you, Michael, for obviously taking time out of your busy animation schedules to come and give this talk for us. Thanks to everyone at Allerton for your attentiveness and for your questions. You know, any links or anything that might be helpful, we'll make sure are available to you. Anything that Tanya or Michael have mentioned, we're happy to provide links to those things as well. Don't forget to check out the job profiles on ScreenSkills around animation if there's anything you want to do a deeper dive into. But yeah, thank you ever so much, guys, for your time and your expertise, and thank you, students of Allerton, for listening. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for inviting us. All right.